Hello team. In this session, we will learn to create tender estimation in the ERP system. The system helps us in creating the tender estimation by factoring in both the direct, that is the material and labor costs, as well as the indirect, that is the freight and other overhead charges as applicable. We can also factor in the markups while creating the estimation. On the tender estimation form, we first need to select the customer for which we are creating the estimation. Then under the header fields, we append the tender registration transaction that we have already created. On appending the tender registration number, all the details related to the tender that we have input in the tender registration will get auto-appended on this screen. Our next step is under the details table, where we can create the tender estimation by uploading the BOQ. There are two ways to do it. One is the manual way, another is by uploading the BOQ using the Excel sheet. First, let us see how we can upload the BOQ using the manual method. In the details table, under the BOQ description, we first input the BOQ description of the header BOQ and then click on the tab button. Then we input the BOQ number and the applicable title for the BOQ. Next, to add the subheader for the current line, we click on the plus sign, using which a new line will be created under the main BOQ. Here we input the BOQ description for the subheader and then we input the title and the applicable BOQ number. Next, to create the BOQ line, in which the BOM will be involved, we again click on the plus icon on the current line, and then we start importing the BOQ description. The title of the BOQ and the BOQ number is applicable. Then to apply the taxes, we need to apply the HSN and SAC code. Once we apply the HSN and SAC code, we need to input the quantity of the BOQ as received from the customer. Then we need to input the UOM applicable for the BOQ line. Our next step is to input the BOM applicable for the BOQ line. For that we need to click on the BOM icon on the line, then click on the plus icon and start importing the BOM as applicable. Once we input the material and services BOMs as applicable, we need to input the supply rate for material items and the erection rate for service items. Once we input the supply rate and erection rate, close this dialog box. Accordingly, on the BOQ line, the supply rate, supply value, erection rate and erection value, and the rate to go for that line will get calculated. And the same will be displayed in the charge details. Now let us see how we can upload the estimation using an Excel file. To do that, first, we need to click on the Export to Excel option in the Details table to download the Excel format in which we need to create the estimation. Once the Excel file is downloaded, we first need to save the Excel file in XLSX format and rename the sheet to Sheet 1. Then in column A, which is line number, we just need to input the numbers in numerical formats one below the other. Under the previous line number, we need to define the child-parent relationship of the BOQ. This first line is the header BOQ for which I am putting the previous line number as 0. The next line falls under my line number 1. Hence input the previous line number as 1. And the next line falls under line number 2, hence I put the previous line number as 2. Under the flags, there are two options, I and B. I stands for independent BOQ, which means these are not the BOM lines. When we are creating the BOM lines, we put the flag as B. Next, from columns D to I, nothing is mandatory, so you can keep them blank. Next, under the column J, item type. Column K, item code. Column L, item name. We input the type of items that we are importing for the BOM. That is, materials, services, consumable items, etc. Under the item code, we input the item code of that item as defined in the Masters module of the ERP system. And under the item name, we input the name of the item as defined in the Masters module of the ERP system. The BOQ number, title, and BOQ description should be input as per the BOQ list received from the customer. Next, under the columns HSN and SAC, we input the applicable HSN and SAC code for the BOQ item. Under the quantity column, we define the quantity of the BOQ and respective BOM required for the fulfillment of that BOQ and then their respective UOM. Then under the supply rate, we define the supply, and under the erection, Erection rate is applicable for the BOM. Once we have done inputting all the necessary fields in the Excel file, we can save the Excel file and close it. Once our Excel file is ready to upload, we need to click on the Import from Excel button in the Details table. Select the Excel file that we need to import and click on Open. On opening, the entire estimation for the BOQ list that we created in the Excel file will get uploaded in the system and supply rate and erection rate. Accordingly, the rates and rate to go will get calculated both at the line level as well as in the charge details. Now let us see how we can factor in the overhead charges as applicable and the margins as applicable. Now to apply the overhead charges or other freight charges related to supply. On the supply column we click on the $sign. Here first we select the amount as applicable and then under the name, I define the name of the column that is overheads on supply. Under the calculation type, we can either select the calculation method on % or per unit. And then we select the calculated on field, which I am selecting as supply. That means this overhead on supply will be calculated on a particular % of the supply rate that is input in the system. Once I do that, I click on Save. Then to add a margin column, I again click on the $sign and now I select profit and follow the same process as overhead. Accordingly, there are two columns created, one is profit on supply and overhead on supply. Similarly, we can create columns for erection as well. Once we create the overhead and other charges and applicable margins in the columns, the same will be displayed under the charge details. Instead of inputting one by one for each line, we can input the applicable charges directly from the charge details and the same will get applied for each line item. Accordingly, the entire estimation amount will get calculated. And the overhead charges will be applied for each line item as well. By this way we can create the tender estimation in the ERP system. Once we are done, we can click on the Save and Exit button and the estimation will be saved. Thank you for watching this video.